Ms. MacEachern.
Thank you. The Native Women's Association of Canada and the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies is here today to highlight the importance to this court of considering not just the race and cultural aspects of the violations that are alleged, but also the intersecting aspects of gender, race, and disability. NWAC and CAFES endorse the positions of the appellant and the other interveners that CSC has a positive duty and the onus, in this case, to prove that the actuarial risk assessment tools that they apply are reliable. This is due to the statutory language of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act and Sections 4 and 24, but also buttressed, we point out, by Section 77 and Section 80, which impose a positive duty on CSC to adopt programming that specifically addresses the needs of Aboriginal prisoners as well as women. It's also due to the vulnerabilities of prisoners in general, given that CSC controls the information, the resources, and the conditions of confinement. But further, NWAC and CAFE submit that this duty also arises because of Section 15 and its substantive equality analysis that must be used as a lens to interpret the protections afforded under Section 7 of the Charter. Treating people the same, regardless of differences, does not necessarily mean we are treating them equally. Applying the same actuarial risk assessment tools, regardless of differences, similarly should impose on CSC a positive duty to prove that the actual risk assessment tools they apply to members of marginalized groups, such as women, Indigenous women, and those with disabling mental health issues, address the particular needs and vulnerabilities of the marginalized group and do not result in perpetuating the current adverse impact. This positive duty is heightened when we're faced with irrefutable evidence of the adverse impact and systemic inequality of these marginalized groups, none more so than federally incarcerated women, particularly Indigenous women and those with disabling mental health issues. The Office of the Correctional Investigator has repeatedly documented this evidence. 94% of federally incarcerated women have mental health issues. Prisoners with mental health issues are more often classified at higher security levels. And for Indigenous women, although they make up just 2 to 3% of the Canadian population, they represent 36% of federally sentenced women, and their incarceration rates are growing rapidly. Indigenous women are overrepresented in maximum security and segregation and underrepresented in minimum security. The impacts of overclassification of federally incarcerated women, particularly Indigenous women and those with disabling mental health issues, are staggering. They are not eligible to participate in beneficial programming, such as work release programming, community release programming, that are designed to enhance their chances of rehabilitation and reintegration. They are more likely to be in maximum security units, which for women impose segregated living units, reduce access to mental health services, and reduce access to Indigenous cultural and spiritual programming. It compounds their existing vulnerabilities, making it less likely for them to be released in ways that are safe for them and safe for others. This is even more problematic for Indigenous women who are the most marginalized in our society. Their treatment by Correctional Services Canada perpetuates the conditions that lead to the realities of Indigenous women's overrepresentation in street involvement, poverty, and as victims of violence as evidenced and being investigated by the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. Respectfully, these facts provide the necessary foundation, in the absence of proof from Correctional Services of Canada to the contrary, to conclude that the application of one set of actuarial risk assessment tools for use with prisoners regardless of gender, race, and disability offends Section 7 as informed by the principles of substantive equality under Section 15. Thank you.